My name is Kathy McNamara, and I have the honor of having been invited to speak with you today. And the title of my message today is, Which Spark is Igniting You? Which spark is igniting you? Because we have sparks in our lives, don't we? Now, we've all heard this said before. We are divine beings having a human experience, right? So let's talk about the divine side first, because that's always the most pleasant side of us, as opposed to those human experiences. The divine side of us allows us to have that divine spark within us. Our founder, Charles Fillmore, said, "You are a spark of the divine, a radiance of universal intelligence, an emanation of the one mind." Isn't that beautiful? We have divine sparks within us. I think it was Thoreau that said there's a divine spark in each of us that can never be extinguished. And I love that. I love knowing that there's a part of me that's there. But there's also a part of me from the church of my upbringing. Now, I was raised in the Catholic Church. From the time I was born, all the way up through high school. I went to Catholic school. I was educated in the Catholic Church. And part of the reason I'm not a practicing Catholic right now is I was always taught that you are born into sin. And you look at a newborn baby, I don't see sin when I see an infant. I see the closest connection to the divine when I see an infant. So it's very interesting. I was doing research for my talk with you today, my message with you, and one of the things that came up was looking for a Bible quote about the divine spark. And I looked everywhere you can imagine. You know, with the internet now, you can see everything, right? I looked everywhere trying to find a quote in the Bible about the divine spark. I hate to tell you, but one does not exist. There is no quote in the Bible about divine spark. So let me give a little challenge. So when you hear the word spark, what comes to mind? Anybody?
Spark plug.
Spark plug. This is how much I know about spark plugs, because I had to look this up. I'm not a car. I know where my gas goes, know how to drive the vehicle, but in terms of running it, forget it. Spark plug ignites the fuel that lets the engine go. What's another thing that comes to mind for spark? Did I hear somebody say light? Light. Reverend Paula's opening prayer for us was very poignant for this, because what I found in the Bible in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8, "For you were sometimes darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light." Now this particular version says children of light, not children in light, children of light. And I do equate spark with light. Reverend Paula used the clicker to light the candle. We have candles in our house all the time. My daughter burns at least 3 candles every day, all day long. We just love candles. We have a fireplace that's gas run, so you light with the clicker. So light is equated with spark. So we have that divine spark, that divine light within each of us, don't we? And it's from that place that we try and come at all times. Viktor Frankl, anybody here has heard of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian Holocaust survivor, was a physician, lived through the concentration camps. I cannot imagine having to go through the atrocities. I mean, the worst thing that's happened to me is when HEB didn't have the brand I wanted, right? I mean, I don't have atrocities in my life. I've lived a very charmed life because, I've had hardship and I've had things that have, on that human experience side, taken you to your knees. I think we all have those moments in our life. But when you have faith and resilience, you can come back from that. But this man just amazed me, because in spite of all that he lived through, in spite of everything that he did, he said each of us carries a unique spark of the divine. I just can't imagine being at the other end of a rifle of a Nazi soldier and being able to see the divine light. I'm not that enlightened. I hope in my life before I pass on, I can get to that point. But that to me is an extraordinary individual that can come to that extent and be there. So we have this divine light within us. And I always liken the divine light to a compass. It's our inner compass. Now, if you have a compass, if you've ever been hiking or used a compass, it always points to true north. So you can always get your bearings because you know where true north is. Our inner compass, that divine compass within us, always points us to truth. It always points us back to God on our spiritual path. It always points us where we need to be, where we need to go. But we have to be open to that. Now, Ephesians, it said, you were once of darkness. I had to wrap my head around that for a minute. What does that mean? Because I don't like to think of myself as darkness. But if you consider the time before you were willing to acknowledge, my family's going to be tired of hearing me say this, but I love this, not just who you are, but whose you are. The time before you were willing to acknowledge that there is a divinity within you, that there is an indwelling God. Maybe we can liken that to darkness. Maybe we can liken the fact that there was a point in our lives when we were not in the light or of the light. Going back to the church of my upbringing, as much as I was, there was a song we used to sing, God is love, and he who is love, abides in God, and God in him. That was about as close a connection as I was ever really given to having an indwelling God that I was deeply connected with. There was always a little bit of a separation of me and that God. It was never my God, it was me and that God. And that disconnect didn't sit well with me. I couldn't develop that personal identification and experience of having that spiritual path that I would be on. So I think that's what that portion of that Bible passage means to me. And then you are children of light. Children in light, but children of light. I'm one of my mother's daughters. I am of my mother. We were one. Same with family members. We are of family, not necessarily in family, but of family. So I liken that spiritual portion of me to that divine spark that's going to lead me, that's going to be my inner compass that takes me. And that's a beautiful thing, the divine spark. But then we've got that human experience, don't we? We've got that human experience where we've got to go through that. And as I said, sometimes it is overwhelming. Sometimes we are hit with so many things in our lives that it's hard to remember and hard to know how to connect back to that divine spark. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to relate to you a little story. When we came from Southern California about 6 years ago, and when I was working actively, we worked about an 1.5 to 2 hour drive from home. It was our choice. I always said that drive to work was my cost of doing business because we lived up in the Temecula Valley north of San Diego, and it was gorgeous. But it was a long drive, and we had to be at work at 6 in the morning.
Oh my.
Yeah, now I don't know about you, but at 6 in the morning, breakfast is a bad word. I don't want to eat at 6 in the morning. So I would get up at 3:15 every morning and I'd make breakfast and lunch. Connie, Megan, and I all worked together. I'd make breakfast and lunch for us to take to work. So that when we got to work, we could take a moment to grab a little bite for breakfast and then we'd meet for lunch. 3:15 is very early in the morning. And when you get up at 3:15, going to bed at a reasonable hour becomes a necessity. So by 8:30, I'm in bed, head's on the pillow, I'm ready to sack out, right? One night, laying in bed, and the doorbell rings at 8:30 at night. Remember we talked about those sparks? Sparks are going off for me. It's 8:30 at night. I'm in bed. How dare they? Who is at that door? And the only reason I even went to answer the door or to acknowledge someone was there was because a few weeks before, our neighbor Steve next door had come over like at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night to tell us that Megan's dome light was on inside her car, and he didn't want the battery to run dead. So now I have this obligation, no matter who comes to the door, I've got to go check it, right? I'm going to be good. Well, we lived in a house that had a 9-foot tall door. And whoever drilled the peephole in that door did not drill it for a woman who's 5 feet tall. So anytime I had to go look out that door, and there was no way to see in our little alcove porch windows because they were on the very front of the house, so you had to go to the peephole. So I Now I have to go to the pantry and get the step stool. And I've got to drag the step stool to the front door to be able to look out and see who's disturbing me at 8:30 at night. And as I'm walking, I'd like to say I'm padding along, but I wasn't padding, I was stomping to that front door. Those sparks were just going off for me. It was ridiculous. And the whole time, this inner dialogue, I got up at 3:30 this morning. I have a job where I supervise 15 people. My collateral duty is to have these classes I do every week. And I'm going on my pity party the whole way to that front door. And I drag the step stool and I get to the front door and I look out the little peephole and there's this sweet young woman standing there. And for some reason, I just felt awashed with this, what am I doing? She doesn't know I got up at 3:15 this morning. She doesn't know I was already in bed. She doesn't know what kind of day I have or what kind of job I do. And furthermore, I don't know anything about her. Why is this young woman out at 8:30 on a weeknight banging on people's doors? I don't know anything about her story. And at that moment, I was able to just take a slow, deep breath and say, can I help you? And she said, I'm wondering if you want a home security system. First thing I thought was, yeah, to keep people from coming to my door at 8:30 at night. But it was like, okay, I thanked her. I said, no, thank you, I'm not interested. Have a nice day, and be safe out there, please. And I got the step stool and I put it away, and I was kind of in a little bit of a fog for a moment. I went to bed. We were in a van pool, so I drove the van pool in the mornings, and it was pitch black at that hour of the morning going to work. And so I had a very silent van, because while I drove, I had anywhere from 3 to 6 people with me who were snoozing in the van. That was yeah, Megan's raising her hand. She still, if it had been 5 minutes longer to get here, she'd have been asleep on the way. But it was very quiet, and as I'm driving, I thought to myself, why did I react that way last night? I'm Irish. I'm Kathy McNamara. I got an Irish temper. How is it that I was able not to react? And I came to the sudden realization, it was a very profound aha moment for me. I allowed for a moment that divine spark to extinguish the human spark. I allowed that divine spark to wash over me and let me let go of the all about me ego in the situation and realize this is just somebody who's trying to earn a living. I didn't know anything about her. Might be somebody working their way through school. It might be a young mom with kids at home and she has to earn extra money. I didn't know. And she knew nothing about me except maybe I was a potential customer. I learned something, and that was probably a good 9 years ago. I learned something about that moment. And I learned to do something that our friend Erica back in California calls the Kathy dance. One day Erica came to me and she said, how is it with 15 people on your team and then you have all these other responsibilities of getting instructors together? I ran the training for the new people coming into our human resources department. And it was an 18-week course, so I had to line up curriculum and staff to teach and whatnot. She said, how is it you always approach things so calmly? You don't overreact at work. And I said, well, I learned how to do this very happenstance circumstances. I learned how to, in a moment, take a slow, deep breath and visually step back and step up and look at the situation and ask myself, how do I really want to present in this moment? How do I want to show up in this defining moment? Because when you think of everything in your life, every moment in your life as being defining, and it is, then you give yourself an opportunity to ask that question. Now, I'd like to say that I handle every circumstance in my life that way. I got 2 witnesses here that will tell you that's not the fact. I don't always react that way. It's very simple to say, oh, take deep breaths, up, back, look, how do you want to present? It's very easy to say that. To be able to do that in the blink of an eye, in an instance, another situation, it's another matter. But that's how I'm trying to handle some of those sparks in my life when they come up. And that was a real big lesson to me. It was a real blow to my ego, because I prided myself on always having a quick wit and quick mouth, right? And I realized that wasn't always the best thing for me to do at that moment. And how I handle myself in those circumstances. So we have those sparks in our lives. Does anyone have a spark they can think of? Something that sparks them into that reaction? Let me ask you, do any of you ever have to drive on Interstate 35?
Yes, if I just can't help it. Yes.
Yes. We drove on 35 today, and it's the blessings of my being able to be with you today. I had nothing happen. But getting on, I'm just saying I-35 kind of gives me a little spark. You know, when you get on the freeway and you're going 5 minutes, I'm going maybe 3 to 5 miles over the speed limit. I'm in the far right lane, the slow lane, and in my rearview mirror is the biggest white pickup truck I've ever seen in Texas, bearing down on me, and they don't want to go around me. And there was a time, probably 20, 30 years ago, there was a time I'm not driving down that road, and somebody would do something that I felt was offensive to me. She said in a very egotistical way. It was offensive to me the way they were driving, and they'd pull up next to me, and I'd wave hello. I don't do that anymore. When somebody starts acting like a weirdo on the road, I've learned to become the best defensive driver I can, and now I bless them on their way. And I hope and bless and pray that they get to their location and destination along with everyone around them in a very safe fashion. Now, that's not to say that sometimes I don't hope that they get back out to their car in the Costco parking lot and see a flat tire. On occasions, I do. But I don't wish personal ill on anyone. I've learned to just let it go, because it doesn't affect me at all. It really doesn't affect me. And part of being this divine being, having a human experience, is knowing when to allow and release and let go. You know, we surrender. We always use the word surrender. And it's not surrender putting up a white flag. To me, surrender in a spiritual standpoint means that you allow yourself to let go of the obstacles and the barriers that have always been there in your way. You let go of them and allow. Just allow. Let spirit in. Let that spiritual divine spark be the one that takes over. And when that happens, you can find yourself having that absolute divine connection with another. Like I said, that night looking through the peephole was just a really transformative moment for me when I realized I can have that connection. I can let go. I can let that transformation occur. I can allow those feelings to come forth. Because we talk about divine spark, but how do we feel that? I mean, it's not like heartburn. Oh, it must be a divine spark. I had Mexican. No, it's what is the divine spark? How do you feel that? Years ago on the internet, there was a video of a little baby, a little girl about 6 or 8 months old. And she's sitting on a sofa, and her daddy would take a piece of paper and tear it, and she would erupt into belly laughs. Just erupt into belly laughs. That to me is a divine spark. Because when I hear that, what do you think the feeling I get is? Pure joy. Pure joy. We are blessed. We live in Vintage Oaks down in New Braunfels, and we have the back portion of our property is just cedars and wild. We have a little fenced-in yard for our little dog, and beyond that. And Connie and I will go out on a weekday morning and sit out with a cup of coffee on the porch. And one of the three of us will have gone down and spread some deer corn on the other side of the fence. We do some dry cat food for foxes and feral cats, and all the bird feeders are filled. And we get to sit there and watch nature. And we have the white-tailed deer and the axis deer. And when they come out, that's a divine spark. That's communing with nature. That is as close to God as I'm going to get some mornings on that. That's my divine spark. I think that we need to look at those times and realize and accept them for what they are. We have those human sparks. We have those human sparks that come up all the time, and how to squelch them and how we handle them is going to vary and differ from time to time, and certainly from circumstance to circumstance. But we do have some things in our spiritual tool chest that help us learn how to handle those human sparks. coming together this morning, like-minded people coming together in fellowship, that's a tool. That's a tool of the divine that we can use to help us get through our day in a comfortable fashion. Meditation. Meditation is a wonderful way. But I've had people come and say, Kathy, I can't sit still for 30 minutes. I can't do it. It's just not in my nature. I can identify with that. It's hard for me to sit still sometimes as well. But you know what? I love to go out and pull weeds in my garden or pull the weeds in the yard. I mow my yard. I'll walk the dog. And during those times, I have my open eye meditations. I used to meditate every day on that long ride to work because everybody was silent then. On the way home, it was listening to people complain about their day, but on the way in was a beautiful time for me. So meditation is a very personal thing. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes sitting in a lotus position, which I'd give anybody in this room $100 if they could show me how to do it now at my age, because I can't do that anymore. But it's, meditation is a wonderful spiritual tool. Visioning, journaling. Now, when I was in ministerial studies, we were asked to please journal. I'm a little anal retentive about things, so I was journaling, but I wasn't handwriting it. I was typing it in my computer, and being the anal retentive person, I kept going back and doing spell check on my journaling, so I realized that wasn't the best way for me to do that. But journaling is another one. Just being still in the presence is also another way. Meditation is a great thing. How many of you have ever heard of the whirling dervishes? Mm-hmm. Whirling dervishes are Sufis. They're part of the Muslim sect. They're a very ethereal portion of and creative portion of the Sufis. Beautiful poets from the Sufis. Rumi is one of my favorites. Hafiz. And they have the whirling dervishes, and that is actually a form of Sufi meditation when they dance. The dancing for them is an expression. I came across this quote by Cynthia Winton Henry, and she wrote a book called Dance, the Sacred Art. And this is what she said: the divine, holding out a hand like a lover or an old friend, eyes expectantly on us, utters 5 golden words. May I have this dance? The divine asking, may I have this dance? Now, I'm not a very good dancer. I love to dance, but I've got 2 left feet, as they say, and I'm not very good. But when someone leads me, when I have that gentle pressure on the small of my back saying, this direction, no, turn this way, let's turn around, I can do that very well because I'm being led. So I want to leave you with this thought. Think about your dance with the divine, that divine spark within you. Think about your dance with the divine and know that there's always that small pressure. Whether you can visualize it or you feel it, there's always that small pressure saying, it's this way. Maybe we should go that way. And dance on that divine path with spirit, because that's where we want to go. So this week, think about the sparks in your life, good or bad, because not all sparks are bad. Some sparks are very good. The spark that lit the candle. Think of those sparks in your life and then ask yourself in a week or so, which spark is igniting me? Thank you very much. Namaste.